Hello, I'm Jim, and today you're in Jim's garage. We're going to be changing the transmission fluid on this 2013 Mini Cooper S hardtop. We'll be using this pump in order to pump the transmission fluid back into the transmission. This can be purchased on Amazon for around $70. It's interesting in that the directions say not to screw the cap off, but to fill the transmission fluid through the breather cap right here. There's a tube here that lets you hook up to the pump, and then there's a nipple right here, and it comes with several adapters, and I was able to find the one that relates to the Mini, so I'll show you that in a sec. Once we get under the transmission, there are going to be 3 pieces in the bottom of the transmission pan that we're going to have to remove. The first one, of course, is the transmission fluid screw. It's basically a 5mm hex screw. It's very short. There'll be a sort of like a crush washer on top of it in between the bottom of the transmission and the pan. We're going to unscrew this, and then what will happen is inside the transmission on top of it will be placed inside the transmission pan this other plastic piece. And this piece is for leveling the transmission fluid. It basically screws out from the bottom, and you can see that these pieces and the adapter for entering the transmission fluid into the transmission all have the same size. This piece will be stuck up in the transmission. You basically just stick the adapter into the object in which you're going to fill the transmission, and it just kind of clicks in place. In order to take it out, you just pull it down and it pops right out. So now you can see the car is level from the front to the rear. With on this side I have some wood underneath the jack stands because the jack points were busted off, so that we can make them the same height. As a part of the process, in addition to the jack stands on each jack point, I'm going to put on each side an additional jack. And on the passenger side I did the similar thing. So I had the jack points, I have the jack stands now on the jack points, and I have a second jack just holding the car, not pushing it up, but just a second security just in case. So I just finished pulling the bolt out of the transmission oil pan, and in order to do that I had to get my 5mm hex wrench, but I had to hook it up to a metal bar because it was really tight on there. It's kind of going dripping now, so it's probably a pretty decent amount of transmission fluid came out. I'm going to go measure it now. So as you can see, there are about 2 3/4 quarts that came out of the transmission. Still dripping over there a bit. So what I'm going to do is put about 3 quarts back in the transmission, and then we'll run the transmission through the gears so that they're all in the proper compartments, and then we'll essentially drain the transmission to the level of this thing that goes back up in the transmission. While it's hot, we have to get it up to, they say, the 35 to 45 degrees Celsius. Here is the transmission fluid that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to put 3 quarts of it into this pump that pumps the transmission fluid back into the bottom of the transmission. Okay, so you can only get really 2 quarts into this pumper, so we'll have to do 2 quarts first and then follow up with a second quart. Okay, anyway, in the process of recording the project, my GoPro ended up crashing on me. So I used my iPad for some of the film. But one thing I want to point out here is that this is all of the oil that I collected that came out of the transmission is in here, including the oil for which I added 3 quarts back into the transmission, and I had to turn on the car, let the car warm up to, let the transmission at least warm up to 40 degrees Celsius. And then I reopened the drain plug and let oil drain out. Now, I'll be honest, when to stop letting that oil drain out was not entirely clear. But anyway, what I did is I collected all the oil that drained out, and I added it back to the collection pan to the bottle here, and you can see that there are now, it was added up to 3 quarts, which is the exact amount of oil that I added to the car and I took out of the car are even, and that's what you want at the end. You don't want to add too much oil or not add enough oil. Anyway, hope this was a helpful video.